Hey, hey, PT on Ice. Afternoon. I can't imagine many people will be able to join today, but first I guess I should start with some apologies. I was unfortunately not able to get my live session to work this morning, so it was a little bit of a debacle. Apparently Facebook has made some changes to how you can get on live. So today you are catching me from the field, and it's a perfect opportunity to talk about how this is not particularly glamorous work at all times, but that it kind of reinforced the point that I wanted to make this morning anyway. So it actually kind of works out. I'm going to go ahead and start my clock because, as you know, I can't stay on time if I don't. All right, we're off and running. So thank you. Welcome. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful fall day here in sunny New Jersey. It's kind of crappy out. It's raining, cold. Feels like fall. But the basic thing that I wanted to cover today was the idea that payment follows quality. And what I mean by that is that we've really seemed to see quite a bit of debate about, I would do this different model, or I would change the way I do things, or I would try to influence health if I could get paid for it. There's kind of like this underlying conversation that no one really wants to discuss or talk about. And I think that's unfortunate because it's one of those things that we have to eventually get to. We have to start to realize that, that we don't really have, the ability to say, well, I'll wait to do that until whatever, it fits my life, it fits my system. And I want to use an example today that I thought was a really good one. It was one that came up on the APHPT workplace, that Catalyst PT out in Chicago suburbs, Jason and Sarah had brought up. And this was something that I thought was kind of neat that they did. They sort of took the plunge a little bit and decided that they were going to try to be a community health-facing practice. So they have a cash-operated practice, and although I don't know the ins and outs of all of it, the understanding that I got is that they weren't really afraid to go a little bit non-traditional so that they could kind of do what they really felt needed to be done, that they could truly be health-facing, that they could kind of pick a priority and say, look, we really have to impact the priority here, which is health in our community. And so that was kind of what they decided they were going to do. What I thought was really cool about the story, as Sarah told it, was that it's completely counter to what we might expect in a normal, traditional way of doing things. So a physical therapist providing physical therapy, of course, is not super counter to what we might expect. But a physical therapist sitting on a commission and really being a voice on how to increase mobility and how to improve the mobility of the community, that's not that common. And of course, most of us sort of have this feel like out of the goodness of our heart we should be doing this stuff, and it's probably just the right thing to do. And you can certainly make the case that that's the case. But what's really interesting about this was that they figured out a way to actually get paid to do it. Now, they didn't just spend time, doing it because it was the right thing to do. They actually took the time to figure out how to pull it off and how to, of course, make a living doing it. And I think that's kind of the conundrum that we've seen so often. Many times people bring up with me and they'll say, hey, I love this idea. I love this idea of going where the people are, and so this is a perfect example, right? The people that I'm working with today happen to be opening up a road and doing some work, and so I've got to be there with them because that's where they are. Going where the people are sounds like it makes a ton of sense, but how do you actually turn it into something? How do you get paid to do it? And so the cool part about this was that they looked at it and said, well, let's find a way to think a little bit outside the box. And what they really wanted to target was mobility, specifically in people in their community. And that turned out to be, as it sounds, a bit more of people who were advanced age, and trying to find ways to get them to move more and move more, move better, move more often. And so what they did is they approached the community and they started to create some sort of an expo, which allowed more and more people to get involved, more agencies got involved, more stakeholders got involved. It broadened the conversation a little bit. And before you know it, now Sarah is involved with the Department of Transportation in her town and in her community, in the city, looking and finding ways to help improve things like walkability of the city. That is awesome. It's an awesome example of how you can kind of entrepreneurially see a problem, use your knowledge base that may not be one for one applicable, but still has a lot of information that can be helpful and shared, and then go after it. So what did they do? They then went and got that rolling, and as the story continues, they actually were able to secure some grant funding. And so AARP and I guess maybe some others have submitted some dollars for them to then continue the work and to broaden it and to find other ways to get after it. And so I just think that's so awesome, because what it does is it stops us from saying, well, what CPT code would I charge for that, or what exactly do I do there? If I can't put my hands on somebody, it's not within my scope. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be more off than that line of thinking. And I think that that's something that we have to look at to other professions. We have to start to think about the fact that other professions don't see it as their skill is what defines them. Rather, they see it as their knowledge is what defines them. And I think that that is something that is really both unique and inspiring. And so it's a bit of a shout out to them this morning, or really almost today, this afternoon. Well, not quite this afternoon. But the idea being a very simple one. And that is that if we're willing to kind of use our knowledge base and say, hey, our knowledge is really what defines us, see how that knowledge can be applied to other populations, other groups, and then take it and apply it, that quality, that quality of effort, that quality of experience is what will begin the conversation. And that ultimately is what will drive payment. So there's this kind of like feeling almost that we have to somehow have defined ways of getting paid before we're willing to start something. And I just think nothing could be further from the truth. The entrepreneur says, no, listen, there's a problem, I'm going to try to solve it. And that person then says, and I just have this sort of gut level feeling. I just sort of know that if I solve the problem, if I make a difference, someone is going to think that that's valuable enough to pay for. And so I think that that's something that we can all benefit from and learn from. So although today, I guess I would like to kind of dive into that in a little more detail. This is probably not the environment to do so. Hopefully the sound is coming out pretty well. But I think the important thing for us to all consider is that is how actual change happens. That if we allow ourselves to kind of stop and just say, hey, my knowledge base, my information, if I was to apply it to that problem over there, could I come up with a solution or help to come up with a solution? Then there's inherent value in that. So I think that Jason and Sarah have really, in my mind, really shown that they can pull it off, and I just love that idea. So from there, where do you go? Well, I guess it comes with a bit of an assessment, right? Like scanning the environment that you're in, scanning the time that you're spending, scanning the people that you're working with, whether that be clients that you're working with, patients that you're working with, or just people that you know in your hometown, and taking the time to stop and say, all right, what are the problems that we face? So I know in my hometown, transportation is a major issue. It's fairly rural, and so people can't really get around that easily. I thought that was really cool, and Sarah, alluded to that a little bit in her post on the APHPT work site about the idea that that was something that they were up against as well, and so they began to find the stakeholders who could help make that better. There are tons of others, right? I mean, if we looked at beyond mobility, if we looked at more than just kind of like movement, what are other things that people are dealing with? I mean, we know, for example, that loneliness is a classic one. It's a major indicator on health. Looks like my screen's getting a little foggy there from the rain. Apologize for that. But we know that loneliness is a major indicator for health and can have a major impact on someone's ability to do stuff. So here as I kind of walk around sort of a suburban New Jersey neighborhood, the question becomes, are there ways for us to join up with folks who need our knowledge, who need our services, right? Are there ways to say to a large neighborhood like this, if it has a homeowners association, can we go to them and say, listen, we think that we'd like to be a stakeholder in that problem, that people in your community need to move more, need to move better, and really need to link up and connect with other people like them, and that will have a major benefit on health. Is that worth it somehow? I mean, who knows where the funding sources might come from? Certainly the Medicare and Medicaid, those are certainly sources that are trying to find ways to spend less. Keeping people active is one way to do that. I had an email this morning. I haven't had a chance to return yet, but a health coalition in New Jersey is looking to find ways to engage PTs so that they can continue the conversation and make comments on processes just like that, like comment to CMS about how can we get PT involved earlier in the conversation. I think it's awesome, and I think that those are the kinds of things that happen with us being willing to put quality at the forefront, being willing to say, look, I'm going to chase the quality interaction, even if it sucks, even if it turns out that today I'm going to be wet and it's going to be rainy and that's not so much a fun day. But if we're willing to do that, if we're willing to put the quality first, that the payment will almost always follow. So I'm going to leave it there. I've got a little bit of time left to spare, and today again, apologies if you typically catch this at 8:30. I think we've got all the technical stuff sorted out. But the most important take-home message for me, and this is really, a shout-out, a tip of the cap to Jason and Sarah, is that, it's there. When the problems are there, if you're willing to kind of put the creative mindset on it, you can find solutions that matter. And if you find solutions that matter, they bring inherent value. And if you bring inherent value, getting paid is not the hard part that we often make it out to be. So I think sometimes that becomes our barrier, and it's just sort of like a false barrier, one that we don't really need to make as primary as we often make it. So shout out with questions. Hit me on Twitter or on email, mike.eisenhart@aphpt.org. If you have questions about that stuff or want to know how you can continue to get involved in the conversation. I think the more we have examples of that, the more people that chime in and get involved and really sort of talk about how they pull it off in their own towns, the more we're going to move the needle on this thing. And ultimately, when we start moving the needle, I'm going to tell you watch out, because as soon as that happens, that's when we're going to change things. We're going to change the market itself. Listen, have a great day. Hopefully this made some sense, and hopefully you're having better weather than I am, and maybe you're in a nice, warm, cozy office today. But one way or another, just know this: the people that depend on you, it matters to them. That quality, your willingness to be there and be a part of it, it matters to them, and that's how we're going to change things and change lives. Have a great rest of the day. It's Monday, still officially Monday, even though it's almost midday. Make it count.